Okay, folks, I'm back with the good Dr. Tom Meek, who's going to answer some questions for us today about diabetes. If you're just tuning into this one, you don't know about Tom, I introduced him a couple weeks ago. So in this series, if you go to number 1, you'll find out Tom is a DO, and Tom works for a healthcare system that I used to work with. He's super knowledgeable, and we've talked a little bit about diabetes, and so Tom's going to open it up. First of all, today, let's do a little introduction. Can you tell us, as broad strokes, what diabetes is and what it does to the body?
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having me. Diabetes, in a nutshell, what it is too much blood sugar in your bloodstream. And over time, blood sugar, you think of blood sugar, it's not a big deal. It's important. You need it to live. It's part of the energy that we get from food. But over time, if the sugar remains in the bloodstream, it raises heck. So the way I think of it, Tony, is like this, is think of your favorite sugary breakfast cereal, right? So for me it
Honey
was...
Bunches of Oats is what I like.
All right, so mine was like Lucky Charms or something like that.
Captain Crunch, you get any number of them.
And so the single best part of that is when you get down to the bottom and you're drinking the milk, right? So there's not only the sugar from the milk, but then there's all the sugar from that cereal. If your bloodstream has a high concentration of sugar like that in it, over time that's going to damage the actual blood, the vessels themselves. Uh-huh. So the place where it happens the first is the teeniest, tiniest blood vessels, the farthest away from the heart. So the fingers, the toes, the tips of your nose.
That's why you have diabetic wounds.
Exactly.
And when we're talking about diabetic wounds, for folks that don't know, a lot of times people with diabetes will get sores on the bottoms of their feet and they'll lose the feeling in their feet.
That's exactly right, because that's the farthest point away from your body where some of the smallest blood vessels are. So that's also the reason why blindness and kidney damage occurs, is because of the damage happens at the tiniest little blood vessels, the capillaries.
So excess sugars that your body's not filtering out or using in some way or processing properly, end up causing damage in those tiny little vessels, like in your eyes, in your peripheral, like you say, your hands, your feet.
Yep.
Your kidneys. You mentioned kidneys.
Yep.
Tom, let me ask you this. So, if a person has diabetes, what are the ailments that end up really causing problems for them? I mean, how does it manifest itself? Like, I've been pre-diabetic. I've been told I was pre-diabetic, and by losing some weight, by eating right, I've reversed that. Now they say my blood sugar's in really good shape, and it has been for a while. But what would have been headed down the road for me if I'd gone into that full-on diabetic state?
Right. So the way it usually presents itself, early onset of diabetes, is usually it's asymptomatic. People have no idea that they even have it. But the signs and symptoms are people feel thirsty all the time. Yeah. That's one of the biggies. They feel like they have to pee all the time, and they feel hungry. So that's the earliest stuff. The reason behind that is, for type 2 diabetes, and that's basically what we're talking about. That's the biggie, is that the insulin doesn't work as well. The insulin from the body, from the pancreas, doesn't get the blood sugar out of the bloodstream. And so just the fact of the blood sugar being there causes the symptoms indirectly. So in a nutshell, increased blood sugar sort of draws fluid out of the tissue into the bloodstream, and it makes you pee more.
And that thirsty thing.
And that's why you have to pee. That's why you feel thirsty.
Not to get off track, because we're going to keep us on track, but I went through a period about 4 or 5 weeks ago where I ate too much sugary stuff, and I knew I did.
Right.
And I started feeling the exact things you're talking about.
Yeah.
It was like I couldn't get enough to drink. I'm going, good, great, my mouth I'm not even making spit. What's wrong with me?
Right.
And I was peeing a lot, and I wondered if I actually typed those things into a WebMD thing.
Yeah.
And it's something called diabetic acidosis, keratotic. I don't know what I'm trying ketonic acidosis. What
DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. That's the worst case scenario. That's when your blood sugar is so high
So I may have really fouled myself up. This is during a period when I was going through Valentine's Day, lots of candy.
Yeah.
My birthday, had birthday cake, all these
Yeah.
different things, and it was. So should I have been really worried when that happened?
No, not so much, because DKA is the worst case scenario. That's a medical emergency. And that's where, because your body can't take the blood sugar out of the bloodstream, it burns other fuel. So it burns the protein, it burns up muscles. And that the breakdown part of muscles are called amino acids, and that's where the ketoacidosis comes from. But that's not until end stage.
So you just told us how it presents itself in early stages, but then what happens?
Yeah, so feeling thirsty, feeling hungry all the time. Well, if you feel thirsty and feel hungry all the time, what do? You drink more, you eat more. Yeah. Right now, you and I are sipping on water, but one thing you don't think about, most people don't drink a lot of water. They don't drink enough. And what a lot of people drink, unfortunately, is sugary beverages. Yeah. Iced tea, soda pop, stuff like that. So if you feel thirsty all the time, you feel hungry all the time, you're just feeding. It's a forward feeding cycle. You're just feeding the symptoms. So by putting more calories in, putting more sugar in to a system that's already too full of sugar. And so that's the earliest presentation. And what we were talking about with the blood vessels, the damage actually occurring at the smallest blood vessels would be potentially, sores or changes of sensation on your feet or your toes.
You get where you can't feel your feet.
Right.
And sometimes, I'm not, once again, I'm bad to want to jump ahead, but what's it called when you get like stinging sensations in your feet and things?
Paresthesia, or diabetic neuropathy.
Neuropathy,
yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so that happens pretty early in some folks. And then another thing that happens pretty early in some folks is the tiny blood vessels in the kidney or the eyes. Those get affected. And so there can be kidney changes that show up on lab values along with high blood sugar, or visual changes, blurry vision, things along that line. For women, more so than men, urinary symptoms, not just having to pee all the time, but because your body's trying to pee out this excess sugar. That's sort of what happens. Yeast infections.
Really? Yeah.
Yep.
Damage to the vessels and everything, particularly with the kidneys. Can it lead to a person having to go on dialysis or something? I mean,
absolutely.
It can.
The leading cause of people having to be on dialysis is end-stage diabetes.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. Or, the leading cause of kidney disease pretty much in general is diabetes, which leads to ultimately to dialysis in a lot of cases.
So Tom, you've been telling us now, and I know you've probably not run through all of them, but so you might end up on dialysis, you might end up blind, you might end up with sores on your feet.
Right.
You might, and these sores don't heal well if you're diabetic either, right?
That's right.
So like sometimes you have to have amputations, your toes and feet or whatever.
Yep.
Is this true?
Yep. So the leading cause, again, of people having to have amputations is from diabetes. So that's absolutely true.
Now, sorry, come on.
So all this, the single biggest thing that a person can do to prevent this from happening, that's one of the things that we are focused on, is to, never have it happen in the first place. And that's pretty much maintaining your ideal body weight. And if you're overweight, to try to get back down there, to lose weight, and doing that both through diet and exercise. Easier said than done. Yeah. But a lot of times patients, that's much easier said than done. So a lot of times patients say, "Doc, what can I do for this? What can I take? Can you give me something?" And we prescribe them medications. And I think patients, one of the pitfalls of taking meds is patients think that, oh, I'm taking this pill, so I can kind of do whatever I want. And that usually never ends well. Instead, the diabetes just progresses and progresses and gets worse. And we have to increase the dose of medication, or we have to add more medication. It won't work. You can't prevent the progression of diabetes unless a patient is really invested, motivated in diet and exercise, and they buy in, they get on board, jump in with both feet, and get really aggressive about it.
Basically, any physician worth his weight is going to know how to tell you how to eat to not get diabetes, and are they going to tell you It's like this is one thing. So people that already have it, my mom is, I'm not trying to out my mom's diabetic. She'll tell anybody, but I never dare say she has diabetes. But so sometimes she has her blood sugars low, sometimes high. Now she has to test it all the time.
Right.
So what happens at that stage, Tom? Do you have to play sort of like delicate balancing act or something? I mean, it would seem to be that you just want to avoid all sugars then at some point, right? But that's not the way it works. Sometimes your sugar can get too low, correct?
Right, that's true. So, I mean, you got to have sugar to live. Your body, that's the fuel that your
carbohydrates
body,
turn into sugars,
uses. So, I mean, there's only 3 things in our diet, no matter what that is, and that's carbohydrates, protein, and fat, alcohol. And in a lot of cases, in a lot of the different tissues, the blood sugar is the go-to product. It's the first thing that your body uses. And if there's too much blood sugar, it's stored as a long-term unit of blood sugar that's called, or long-term unit of sugar that's called glycogen. But it can also be stored as, and this is what a lot of people don't know, is it can be stored as fat and vice versa. So a lot of times the low blood sugars result from, people, their pancreas has an insulin spike sometimes. I think of it like one of the problems of diabetes is that the beta cells from the pancreas, they aren't making enough insulin in the later stages. And, it's sort of like they're sputtering. Their last gasp is to sort of start kicking out. So it's like your car, when the carburetor's messed up and it's...
Yep, a little sputter.
Yep. And so sometimes if there's an insulin surge, or sometimes after someone eats a particularly high carbohydrate or sugary meal, then the body will kick out a bunch of insulin, and that can cause the low blood sugar.
Wow. So sometimes eating too much sugar can cause even low blood sugar.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
But that's once everything's kind of gotten off kilter and out of balance.
Right.
Now, but we've been talking about prevention. So the number one thing I'm taking from what you're saying is try to keep your body weight at your ideal weight.
Yeah.
But then should we all make a concerted effort to not eat over sugary things? Is that a smart this main starting point?
It is, but it's it's so hard to do because one of marketing from people who make food products want to sell them.
Yeah.
And we as human beings are built on pleasure. I like to eat.
Yeah. We like sweet things.
And eating, it's not just eating, it's not just the taste of it, as socially. I mean, you got together last night with our families and ate, and that's fun. That we look forward to that. So when you get into it, you're working against dealing with your wife or your mom's cooking, or and it's hard to turn some things down. But more so, there are a lot of the foods that we think of as healthy aren't necessarily. Anything you drink besides water is going to affect your metabolism. So, even if it's coffee or tea with nothing in it, that's going to affect, because of the caffeine, it's going to have a stimulating effect. And the stimulating effect can affect your blood sugar because, it affects cortisol and the stress reaction in your body. Milk, you look at any magazine and
milk does the body good.
Yeah, you got milk does the body good. Now, milk has a lot of good things about it, but it's got sugar in it, and it's got lactose, and so that is a form of sugar, and so that is calories.
I mean, you'd think orange juice, what could be wrong with orange juice or cranberry juice, but particularly cranberry juice because they'll put a ton of sugar in it to make it get sweet flavor that it naturally doesn't have.
And so, fruits and vegetables, that's what it's all about. But if you or I were to have an apple or an orange, and think about, with cooking or a lemon or a lime, the amount of juice that you get out of one particular fruit, or, a citrus fruit is probably the best example. It's not that much, right? Versus, a 12-ounce glass.
Right.
So there's a lot more of it and a lot more calories.
You have to squeeze probably
sugar.
6 or 8 oranges to get a glass of orange juice.
Exactly.
So it's like you're eating 6 or 8 oranges.
Exactly. So even though, orange juice in and of itself, there's nothing bad about that, but too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
And it's promoted as health, healthy and vitamin C, and it has that stuff, but it also has On average, the same amount of calories in a 12-ounce cup as a Coke.
Yeah.
And you don't think of it that way. So.
Yeah. You justify it because it comes from something that you think is natural and something that has vitamins in it. Hey man, I'm getting vitamin C.
Right.
But you can drink a glass of orange juice, you probably got more vitamin C than you really need in a day. Maybe the takeaways then, tell me if I'm wrong, is just be careful about how much sugar we're getting. Think about it, right? Look into the foods that we're eating. Would you say, Tom, that at a certain age you're more prone to get diabetes, or is this widespread over all ages?
Absolutely. So the older you are, the longer the process goes, particularly if you're overweight, the longer that you have. So if I back up a little bit and just talk about the process of getting diabetes,